Hello again, Graham, and thank you so much for this opportunity to join you for Focus Live at 5 on Facebook. And everyone listening and watching today, I hope that today will be encouraging to you if you are concerned about your children's social functioning. A question was sent in about a little 7-year-old just not making friends and a mom really being concerned. And I don't think this is an isolated concern. In fact, listening to parents over the past few months, the one thing that stood out was this issue of them being disconnected, them not interacting with their friends, them desperately missing those friends, and even being depressed because they're not able to interact with their peers. And so we all have those concerns about our children at some point in life, not just with these first and second graders where we're still holding our breath, wondering whether they will be ready for school, ready for the kind of social interaction, concentration, and all the other developmental goals that should be in place when they go to school. So let's just focus on this 7-year-old for a minute, and then I would like to talk about general concerns regarding our children's social readiness and social functioning, and how understanding their personality types can help us decide whether we should be concerned and should be teaching a very intentional social skills, or whether they're really acting normal for who they are. So let's think about a 7-year-old who is an extroverted person at home who's very interactive with his parents, talkative, lively, expressive. And then when he arrives at school, it's a whole other side that comes to the fore. This is not at all unusual, and it's actually a compliment. It means that at home, in your family, there is a safe place to be completely expressive. And a lot of introverts are extroverted in their safe circle, among their special friends, and at home with their own family members. Introverted people are not necessarily task oriented. In fact, 50% of them are very much people, which means when it's their people, they will look like the party animal and will surprise us. So if that's how you know your child, and all of a sudden you get the feedback that they're sitting in the corner, not participating and not really making friends, then I understand why you would be concerned, but maybe you don't need to. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a run through of the personality types and how they socialize at home and at school so that you can have a sense of what is normal. And then we're going to talk about intentionally training social skills. So the two extroverted personality types typically would be our palm trees and rose bushes. Now, when you look at that little illustration at the back and you look at the rose, you can't really see the thorns very clearly from, on this photograph. But those are the thorny extroverts. So those are the kids who are more bossy than they are really popular. They're the ones who have followers more than they have friends. They tell other kids what to do, and they get rid of the friends who don't want to cooperate and who don't want to do what they want to do. Sometimes they're called bullies for that reason. Usually, a bully would have to do more things wrong than just shun people around, but they are experienced as pretty forceful and dominating. So that would be our rose bushes. But then our other extroverts are these popular, talkative palm tree kids. They are the ones who make friends easily, who can talk to anybody. Every stranger is just a friend they haven't met. And they typically just slide into the classroom, run out onto the sports field and make friends. They can do it at the gas station if you give them enough time pumping gas. They will make a friend. So, not hard for them. So, we look at those two extroverted types and we go, wonderful social skills. Really? Um, just being talkative, just being outgoing, does that make you a socially skilled individual? Let's pause there and think about it. What about that palm tree child who's friends with everybody, who doesn't distinguish between strangers and friends, and who puts themselves in a dangerous situation? I mean, these are the kids who, when you throw them in the public pool and they paddle around and they get tired, instead of you know floating to the side of the pool. They just hang on to anybody who is in the pool. They say hi, and they're hanging on to Mr. So and so, and Mr. So and so may not really be the individual you want your child to hang on in the public pool, but there your palm tree goes. So that is not a great social skill, to just trust anybody like that, to be responsive to anybody who's friendly with you. And the rosebush who shunts everybody around, is that really leadership? Probably not. Probably uh, it's just being forceful and not necessarily being somebody who can influence and inspire and lead towards a good goal. So, why am I saying this? It's so that we can understand that we don't look at the full picture when we say my quiet child who has only a handful of friends is socially maladaptive, and the child who has a ton of friends and has everybody following them is a child who is socially well adapted. Because social skills also involves things like being a good listener, being able to follow when somebody is leading in an area in which you are not supposed to lead, where your set of talents don't necessarily feature as strongly as theirs. It's also a wonderful social skill to be able to encourage, to comfort, to observe carefully and wait for the right timing to engage. Now, none of these skills I just mentioned are in overabundance in the natural makeup of a rose bush or a palm tree. These are the exceptional social skills of your introverted children, and they are the pine trees and the boxwoods. Now, boxwoods are those wonderfully perfectionistic and sensitive and um, I want to say thin skinned children that can be pruned into any shape you like. Very obedient, very often the classroom or the teacher's pet, class captain, because they always obey the rules and they always remind everybody else what the rules are. So they end up in these leadership positions that they don't want, because they don't actually want to be the boss. They just want everybody to do the right thing. So they are our boxwood children, and they don't typically have a lot of friends, and there's a reason for that. They're very discerning. They're a little picky and choosy. Think of how they eat. Think of what they're willing to wear. Think of how the bed needs to be for them to get in it. Think of how the bathwater always needed to be when they were younger. These are fussy kids. They don't just take anything the way it comes. They have an idea of what the right way is, how the sandwich should be cut, and how far apart certain foods should be, or how certain clothes should fit. So even on a sensory level, they tend to be pretty sensitive. So if a child doesn't look right, sound right, um, play in the right way, talk the right way, a boxwood is very easily put off. So friends that fit their circle have to fit a very particular set of criteria. And they don't mean to be critical or difficult. They are gifted to be discerning. They are gifted to be careful. They are gifted to be analytical. And they're going to be that way even when it comes to their relationships with friends and peers. And they're not just going to play with everybody, because they listen and watch. But there is another tree type who listens and watches even more, and that's the pine tree. Now, when I think of pine trees, I always kind of visualize them either in this cool, calm, quiet forest, or I see them standing on a hill, kind of looking down into the valley and seeing everything of the rat race from a distance. So all of the other personality types are running around in the valley, running the rat race, competing, being critical, being talkative, making lots of noise and lots of movement, and this spine just watches. And you'll know if you have one of those kids. They can sit on the sideline, watch everybody else, and they can tell who's going to fall, what's going to go wrong, who's going to win, who's the best at something. And they may or may not tell you everything they observe, but they are really tuned in. They may look like they're on cloud nine, just dreaming, floating around, but actually, they are our super observant kids. They also easily get overwhelmed. So imagine a child arriving at school who is wired to be an observer, and everybody's running wild. Kids are hugging, crying, playing, throwing objects back and forth. This child who processes slowly, who observes, and who's trying to figure out the right timing to engage could sit on the sideline all day waiting for the right timing. When I was in school, jumping rope was a thing. And I remember um, that skill of standing on the side and kind of rocking back and forth as the rope came around a couple of times, and you're trying to get the rhythm, and all of a sudden timing is just right, and you move into that loop and you jump, and there you go. Do you remember they were those kids who just stood and they watched and they looked like they were going to engage, but they just never did? That is your pine tree child, because there's never enough of a warning, there's never enough of a quiet moment, and the decibel level just doesn't ever come down enough for them, with their gentle and deliberative way, to actually get into the game. Does it bother them? Because that is the question. So often, our own temperament is the tinted lenses through which we look at our children. And maybe you were very popular. Maybe you were the palm tree. You were invited to every party. Everybody was your friend. And you want that for your child because it was so much fun growing up with so many friends and always being out and about with your peers. And you see your child sitting in the room or sitting on the side of the sports field, and it breaks your heart for them. But if their heart's not breaking about it, and they have one or two really sweet friends that they talk to once or twice a month, they may actually have all of their social needs fulfilled. I know that's a shocking thought, but that's the truth of how different we are. Now, a pine tree child needs to feel included. They need to feel connected. They are people, but they really don't need a massive tribe. They just need one or two companions who understand them, and not necessarily kids who do a lot with them or talk a lot with them, or kids that they will share everything with, just somebody to be with. So if you see your pine tree child, maybe your 7-year old has that temperament. If you see him just walking up to the same friend every time and just sitting there eating sandwiches side by side, that's perfectly fine. That's safe, just being together. That is possible for a pine tree. My daughter is married already, but is probably the pinest pine I know. And lo and behold, she met a young man who's also very pine, with a little bit of boxwood mixed in, but very quiet, double introvert like her. And so when he came to our house for the first time to date her, we were living in temporarily in a wooden uh, hut in the mountains. It was a beautiful place here in Tennessee, and there was a big porch swing outside. And they went for a walk, and then they said hi, and then they said they were going to sit on the swing a little bit. Now, of course, you sit inside as a parent, you pretend you're not listening what's going on the, on the porch, but you are, and you hear the swing going back and forth and nothing else. And you're wondering, what are they doing? And, you can't peep out the door. You can't, well, I came up with something that I could maybe take them something to drink. So I popped my head out and said, would you like hot chocolate or something like that? It was in the middle of summer, so it probably wasn't hot chocolate, maybe soda or something. And they were just sitting, like literally sitting. And I mean, I opened the door. There was no time for them to, slip out of an embrace or a kiss or something, if that was going on at all. They were just sitting. They really were. And after a while, they said goodnight. He left. She came in and she said, Mom, now I know what it feels like when you can just sit and nobody says anything. And I was about to tell her, yes, it's so uncomfortable because I'm that extroverted person. I'm everything except pine. And she's made me so uncomfortable in the past because I would be sitting in the kitchen cooking and she would just sit on the chair and just watch me. And, and I wanted to say, yes, okay, do you want to do something? Do you want to say something? But she was content just to sit and watch me and just be there. Not necessarily even being with me, just being there in the background. And that was what she and this young man did. They sat on the swing and they were just being. They were not doing anything. And they were so happy. And she came in and told me how good it felt to meet another person who could just sit and be. And well, they celebrated their first anniversary last week. It's working out. They're still being together and maybe not doing a whole lot, but being together. And they don't have a ton of friends. They have a small circle that they hang with every single weekend. Same tiny, not even a crowd, tiny group of people. And they are as content as they can be. That is the social pattern of an introvert. And there's nothing abnormal about it. But I do confess that there were many times when I was concerned about her. And the parent who sent in this question, you will still in the future be concerned about that pine tree many times. When you see him not participating, not competing, not engaging, and often saying phrases such as, I don't think I will enjoy it. No, I don't want to go. No, I'd rather stay home. No, I'm okay here in my room. That's the language of the introvert, and we learn eventually to accept that and to see that they are happy enough in their introvert skin. But if this is a child who comes home crying, I can't make friends, nobody talks to me, nobody likes me, then there are a couple of things we can do. First of all, know what their strengths are. Pine trees are observant, as I said, and they are nurturing and they are able to comfort. And those skills are extremely useful in making new friends because a phrase such as, hey, I saw today how far you can kick a ball, is a powerful friend making phrase. Or a phrase such as, I saw that he was very rude to you. I'm so sorry that that happened. Is something you'll not often hear from a rosebush mouth, probably the result of a rosebush encounter, more likely. Boxwoods are also really compassionate and they are able to deal with feelings and talk about feelings. And every friend needs somebody who's able to handle their crying, handle their complaints, and handle their criticism without just trying to cheer them up. That's something your boxwood can do. So if you have an introverted child, encourage them in those skills. Boxwood kids, um, move closer to negative emotions. Listen to the crying child. Give a hug. Write a note. That's something they love doing. Draw a picture. Figure out what their favorite game is and offer to play that with them. Palm trees just play whatever they want to play and they make it look like so much fun that everybody joins. And the rose bush just tells people this is what we're playing and then they have to do that. Pines and boxwoods can be so much more compassionate and sharing, and they are much more skilled at taking turns and waiting their turns. And when you highlight these skills that your introverted children have, they become more aware of them and able to use them to make friends. To allow one of those extroverted kids that they usually admire to have a turn first or to teach them a new skill is another way to start a friendship. So your pine can walk up to a rose and say, hey, I would like to play with you guys, but I am too embarrassed to ask that palm tree if I could play. Can I go with you? And the rose bush breaks the wind and your little pine tree can become part of the game in that slipstream. Equipping your children with temperament knowledge can greatly empower them in making friends and understanding their own lack of social needs or talent at being social and interactive. I think the key for all of us is know your child's design and help them live their purpose.